Our goal has been to cover the full expanse of surgical safety, and it's led us to judge that we need to go back to basics. There are just a few key practices that can make a difference for infection reduction, and that may be the biggest value in saving lives, is by paring down and focusing not on saying we're going to solve all of it. I'm always struck by how aviation changed from being an extraordinarily dangerous thing where military pilots, 1 in 4, died flying planes. And crucial to that were very basic systems that came in place. And I traced it back to October 1935, when the first checklist was used systematically as part of how the Army began to make flying planes safer. And the prompt was that the planes became more complex than you could just remember in your head, no matter how expert you were as a pilot. And it was when the B-17 bomber had its maiden voyage and the lead pilot crashed, and it was someone who was one of their best pilots, so you couldn't just say, well, he needed more education. That was the problem. They needed a simple system, and there's no more simple system than a checklist. And yes, it just took us about 75 years to figure that out, that we might need the same thing in surgery, that we'd reached our B-17 moment.
But one of the problems is, I've heard from 2 or 3 doctors, is that you can get a sort of aviation fatigue. And I remember talking to a doctor quite recently. She said, I'm fed up being told what to do by aviation. Don't they realize medicine is a special case? And I decided not to take that any further, but the truth of the matter is it isn't a special case. It's no more a special case than a steelworks or a hamburger joint or whatever, the lessons that I'm talking about human behavior.
We're in an industry where it's like unsung heroes, right? Because if something doesn't happen, no one pats you on the back and says, thank God, nobody died today, or thanks for saving my life. But that really doesn't happen, because no one, if someone dies, then we can blame someone, but it's like counting a negative. It's very difficult to see, if you don't have something happen. There's just so many processes going on at one time to make a building or a structure that you can't avoid having something that organizes them. So something that puts a check to something and make sure it's there. Or assembling a crane is very involved, and so many pieces that have to go into that crane, and you'll rely more on a checklist, as opposed to just a rule of thumb. Because sometimes accidents will happen, and when an accident does happen, you find yourself in a very strange position. You're trying to prove yourself innocent. And sometimes just having those checklists behind you to show that in good faith, you've done the right thing for a very long time, and now you had an accident, is always good risk aversion as well. And it takes out the punitive side of things. The bigger the process, larger the process, the more important a checklist becomes.
Other industries have shown us that the way you deal with complexity is by being systematic. And the simplest system known to work is just a checklist. 7 million people are left dead or disabled each year because of complications from surgery, and most of them are avoidable. The checklist addresses this. There are 19 items on the checklist. It is a team communication tool for making sure the most basic areas of planning for the best operation for the patient have happened.